If it wasn't caught on camera, what this owl tried to do to a sleeping child would be dismissed as pure fiction. In the dead of night, when a family's security system captured something so extraordinary, it left wildlife experts questioning everything they knew. A predator with silent wings, a child in peaceful slumber, and a moment so chilling, it defies all natural explanation. What happens when the hunter of the night decides a child's bedroom is its new territory? The footage you're about to see will make you question everything you thought you knew about these creatures of the darkness. The Henderson family thought they'd found paradise in Pine Creek Estates. Tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and that sense of security that comes with suburban living. For 3 years, life had been picture perfect for Sarah, Mike, and their 5-year-old son, Ethan. Their 2-story colonial with its fresh white trim and welcoming red door represented everything they'd worked for: stability, safety, and the promise of countless happy memories. But beneath the neighborhood's peaceful veneer, something was changing. First, it was Mrs. Donovan's cat that went missing. Sarah would later recall, her voice trembling. Then the Millers found strange scratches on their 2nd-story window. The community newsletter, usually filled with bake sale announcements and gardening tips, suddenly featured warnings about securing trash cans and keeping small pets indoors after sunset. Wildlife sightings became the talk of community meetings: foxes, coyotes, and most notably, owls perching on rooftops, watching, waiting. The local animal control office was flooded with calls, but their standard response offered little comfort. Wildlife displacement is common in developing areas. What began as curious neighborhood gossip quickly evolved into genuine concern. Parents started accompanying their children to bus stops. Evening dog walks were cut short. It felt like we were being observed, Mike explained, running his fingers through his hair, a nervous habit he'd developed in recent months. Like something was studying our patterns, our routines. The once vibrant evening atmosphere of the neighborhood faded as families retreated indoors before dusk. The decision to install security cameras came after the Johnsons, 2 doors down, reported hearing what they described as clawing at their attic window for 3 nights straight. A sound so persistent that their teenage daughter refused to sleep in her own room. Little did the Hendersons know that their $249 security system, purchased on sale and installed during a weekend DIY project, would soon capture footage so disturbing that wildlife experts would demand to authenticate it before even commenting. The cameras, with their blinking red lights, gave the family a false sense of security. "We thought we were being proactive," Sarah would later tell reporters, her eyes vacant with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who had witnessed something beyond comprehension. "We thought we were protecting our family." But what they didn't realize was that something had already been watching their home, particularly the small window to Ethan's bedroom that they often left cracked open on warm spring nights. The same window where, just days earlier, Sarah had noticed unusual marks on the sill, but dismissed them as weather damage. The same window where Ethan claimed he heard whispers at night, which his parents attributed to an overactive imagination fueled by bedtime stories. The same window that would soon become the entry point to a night of terror that would change their lives forever. The barn owl, Tito alba, is often romanticized in children's books and wildlife documentaries. Its heart-shaped face and ghostly white plumage give it an almost mystical quality. But behind this ethereal appearance lies one of nature's most efficient killing machines. With a wingspan reaching up to 43 inches and weighing less than a pound, these nocturnal hunters embody nature's perfect balance of deadly precision and delicate design. Dr. Eleanor Winters, head of ornithology at State University, had studied these creatures for over 20 years. Her office walls were adorned with feather specimens and high-speed photography, capturing the moment of strike. Images both beautiful and terrifying. What most people don't understand about barn owls is their incredible hunting precision, she explained, analyzing the footage weeks later, her fingers trembling slightly as she advanced the frames. Their hearing is so acute they can detect a mouse's heartbeat under a foot of snow. They can fly in complete silence due to specialized feather structures that eliminate turbulence. And they possess a grip strength that can crush small skulls instantly. In the avian world, they're the equivalent of stealth bombers. Victims never hear them coming. The particular owl that had been stalking Pine Creek Estates wasn't just any barn owl. Trail cameras from the nearby nature preserve had captured images of it over several months. Larger than average, with distinctive markings on its left wing that researchers had nicknamed the Phantom. The data file on this specimen had grown unusually thick. Wildlife officials had noted its unusual behavior patterns, hunting closer to residential areas, showing less fear of human presence, and demonstrating remarkable problem-solving abilities when tracking prey. It had been observed using techniques rarely documented in its species, waiting for hours in perfect stillness, using structures as hunting blinds, and even appearing to bait smaller animals into exposed positions. "We should have intervened sooner," Dr. Winters would later admit during the investigation, her professional composure cracking. But there's no protocol for this kind of behavioral anomaly. Nothing in the literature suggested this level of adaptation. The expansion of the Westlake shopping complex had destroyed over 200 acres of prime hunting territory for local predators. The environmental impact study, hastily approved by county officials eager for tax revenue, had glossed over the displacement concerns with vague promises of wildlife corridors that never materialized. Construction crews reported finding abandoned nests and dens throughout the cleared land, some with evidence of recent occupation. "It's a textbook case of habitat displacement," environmental activist James Rodriguez pointed out at a town council meeting that no one paid much attention to. His impassioned speech noted only as public comment in the minutes. "When we destroy their homes, they don't just disappear. They adapt. They find new territories. They get desperate. And desperate animals don't follow the rules we've come to expect. And desperate predators take risks they normally wouldn't consider." The Phantom had been spotted with increasing frequency on the edges of Pine Creek Estates. Security footage from various homes showed it perched on fences, rooftops, and tree branches, always watching, always calculating. Mrs. Levin's tabby disappeared from a screened porch. The Andersons' Yorkshire Terrier refused to go into their backyard after sunset, trembling and whining at the door. The Garcias found strange droppings on their deck furniture containing what appeared to be small bones and fur. Residents reported missing pets and strange scratching noises. But no one connected these incidents to a pattern of escalating predatory behavior. Each occurrence was treated as isolated, explained away as coyotes, neighborhood cats, or raccoons. In retrospect, the signs were all there, admitted Officer Daniels from Animal Control, his weathered face grim as he reviewed the incident timeline. But who would ever imagine that a wild bird would... His voice trailed off, still unable to articulate what the security footage would later reveal. In 22 years of wildlife management, I've never seen anything like this. Never even heard rumors of anything like this. What the Hendersons didn't know as they tucked Ethan into bed that fateful night was that their home had already been under surveillance for weeks. The phantom had identified a potential entry point, had studied the family's movements, had perhaps even made test approaches on previous nights. The soft glow of Ethan's nightlight, visible through the partially open window, created a beacon in the darkness. The stuffed animals arranged on his windowsill, a teddy bear, a plush dinosaur, and ironically, a fluffy owl, provided perfect camouflage for a predator to blend between them. Their son's bedroom window, left cracked open to let in the spring breeze, wasn't just an architectural feature to this predator. It was an invitation, a vulnerability, a way in. The security camera installed under the eaves of the Henderson home had been positioned to monitor the front yard and driveway. No one had thought to angle it toward the second-story windows. No one had imagined they would need to. And tonight would be the night it would make its move. The digital clock on Ethan's nightstand glowed 11:58 p.m. when the first unusual sounds began. Just outside his window, a gentle scratching, almost imperceptible, like fingernails lightly dragging across the wooden frame. The boy stirred slightly, his small body turning beneath dinosaur-patterned sheets. But he didn't wake. The house remained quiet, with only the occasional hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the soft whirring of the ceiling fan above his bed. Outside, the neighborhood had fallen into that peculiar suburban silence that seems to amplify even the smallest disturbances. A car passing 3 blocks away, the distant bark of a dog, the rustle of leaves in the gentle spring breeze. At precisely midnight, the phantom landed on the outer windowsill with impossible grace. Its talons made no sound as they gripped the painted wood. For several minutes, it remained perfectly still, a ghostly sentinel with eyes that reflected the faint moonlight filtering through the clouds. Those eyes, unnaturally large and expressive, surveyed the bedroom with calculated precision, tracking the rise and fall of Ethan's chest beneath the covers. The owl's feathers ruffled slightly in the night air, but otherwise, it might have been mistaken for one of the decorative figurines that adorned the Henderson home, a taxidermist's masterpiece, rather than a living, breathing predator. In the master bedroom down the hall, Sarah Henderson shifted in her sleep, some primal part of her brain registering a disturbance in the house's atmosphere. A faint crease appeared between her eyebrows, her maternal instincts sensing something amiss even in unconsciousness. But exhaustion from her double shift at the hospital pulled her back into deeper slumber before consciousness could take hold. The soft cotton of her pillow seemed to draw her deeper into dreams, away from the reality unfolding in her son's bedroom. Mike remained motionless beside her, his sleep undisturbed, one arm flung across his face to block out the world. His breathing was deep and rhythmic, the sound of a man who believed his family was safe within the walls he had chosen for them. The security system he had installed, the neighborhood he had selected after months of research. The owl's head rotated 180 degrees, scanning the yard below and the neighboring houses for any signs of movement or threat. Its neck moved with mechanical precision, the vertebrae designed by evolution for this exact purpose: to observe without being observed. Finding none, it returned its attention to the narrow opening of the window. With methodical patience, it extended one talon toward the gap and, with surprising dexterity, hooked the edge of the window frame. A gentle pull widened the opening by half an inch. The hinges, which Sarah had meant to oil for weeks, made no sound. The moisture from recent rains had temporarily eliminated their usual squeak. The home security system, armed and functioning perfectly, detected no breach. Its sensors were programmed for broken glass, forced entry, or movement across thresholds. Not the silent, incremental widening of an already open window, by something weighing less than a pound. The control panel in the kitchen displayed its reassuring green light, broadcasting a false promise of protection to the sleeping family. In the company's downtown monitoring center, screens showed nothing unusual at the Henderson residence, just another peaceful night in Pine Creek Estates. At 12:17 a.m., the gap was wide enough. The phantom compressed its wings against its body and slipped through the opening with a fluid motion that defied its size. Its feathers, evolved over millennia for silent flight, brushed against the window frame without producing so much as a whisper. Once inside, it settled atop Ethan's bookshelf, blending perfectly between a trophy from last year's soccer tournament and a model rocket the boy had built with his father. The owl's coloration, mottled browns and whites, created a natural camouflage against the wood and plastic surroundings. From this vantage point, the predator observed its surroundings with unnatural intelligence. The bedroom door, closed. The sleeping child, unaware. The potential threats, none. The digital clock's red numbers cast a faint crimson glow across the lower half of the room. The nightlight plugged into the wall cast distorted shadows across the room, creating a dreamlike quality to the scene. A quality that would later make the boy question whether what happened next was real or nightmare. On the walls, posters of dinosaurs and superheroes seemed to watch the intruder with flat, printed eyes. The phantom waited, demonstrating a patience unknown in its species. 30 minutes passed without movement. The only sound was Ethan's steady breathing and the occasional creaking of the house settling around them. Once, the boy mumbled something in his sleep, a fragment of dream dialogue, and the owl's head snapped in his direction, its eyes narrowing slightly before returning to their wide, observant state. At 12:52 a.m., the owl left its perch. Its wings opened partially for balance as it glided silently to the floor, landing beside a pile of stuffed animals that had fallen from the bed. For a moment, it stood motionless, its talons splayed on the carpet, head cocked at an angle as though listening to something beyond human perception. Perhaps it was calculating risk. Or perhaps, as Dr. Winters would later theorize, it was experiencing something closer to curiosity than hunger. The security camera installed on the front porch recorded nothing unusual that night. It captured the occasional moth fluttering near the porch light, the neighbor's cat slinking across the driveway at 1:24 a.m., but nothing that would help explain what was transpiring inside. The motion-activated floodlights in the backyard remained dark, their sensors pointed outward to detect approaching threats, not the danger already within. The sophisticated alarm system, with its promise of 24/7 monitoring and peace of mind guarantee emblazoned on the yard sign, detected no irregularities. But something had changed in the Henderson home. Something fundamental and irreversible. The boundary between the wild and the domestic had been breached in a way that defied conventional understanding. Nature, with its endless adaptability, had found a way to reclaim space from human encroachment. Not through force, but through intelligence. At 3:17 a.m., Sarah Henderson woke suddenly, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't identify. The digital clock on her nightstand cast an eerie blue glow across the bedroom. She lay still for several moments, listening to the silence of the house, trying to identify what had pulled her from sleep. There was no sound of breaking glass, no blaring alarm, no obvious disturbance, just an overwhelming sense that something was wrong. A mother's instinct, powerful and primitive, compelled her to check on her son. The feeling was so strong it was almost physical, like a hand pressing against her chest. She slipped from bed, careful not to wake Mike, and padded down the hallway toward Ethan's room. The wooden floor felt unusually cold beneath her bare feet. as though the temperature in the house had dropped several degrees. The air in the hallway seemed different somehow. Thinner, charged with an electricity she couldn't explain. The family photos lining the wall watched her progress, smiling faces from happier times, beach vacations, Christmas mornings, birthday parties, all oblivious to the night's events. When she reached for Ethan's doorknob, she hesitated. Later, she would tell investigators that she felt a presence on the other side of the door. Something watching, waiting for her to enter. Something that didn't belong. The brass knob felt unusually cold against her palm, almost burning with its chill. For a brief moment, she considered returning to bed, telling herself she was being irrational, that her son was fine, that the house was secure. But the maternal instinct that had awakened her wouldn't be silenced. Her hand trembled as she turned the knob and pushed the door open. The hinges creaked, a sound that seemed deafening in the night silence. The sound that, in retrospect, may have saved her son's life by announcing her arrival. What she saw in that moment would forever change the Henderson family, the quiet community of Pine Creek Estates, and our understanding of the natural world and its adaptation to human encroachment. It would raise questions about the boundaries we believe exist between species, about the intelligence we attribute to wildlife, and about the false sense of security that permeates suburban existence. Most importantly, it would force a reckoning with a truth that humans have long tried to ignore, that we are not as removed from the food chain as we like to believe. The scream caught in Sarah Henderson's throat. Later, she would describe this moment as paralysis of disbelief, a cognitive shutdown when reality presents something so incongruous with our understanding of the world that the mind simply refuses to process it. The door swung open to reveal Ethan's room bathed in the soft glow of his dinosaur nightlight. At first glance, everything appeared normal. The collection of action figures arranged on his dresser, the solar system mobile hanging from the ceiling, the stack of library books on his nightstand. But Sarah's eyes were drawn to the foot of her son's bed where the phantom perched in terrible majesty. The owl stood nearly 16 inches tall, its wings partially extended in a display that ornithologists call a mantling posture, a protective stance typically used when guarding prey. But it wasn't feeding. It wasn't attacking. It was watching. The creature's head swiveled toward Sarah, those enormous black eyes reflecting pinpricks of light from the hallway behind her. For 3 heartbeats, she would always remember counting them. Woman and bird regarded each other across the darkened room. It was studying me, she would later tell Dr. Winters during their first interview. Not like an animal, like someone weighing options. What happened next would become the subject of scientific debate, media speculation, and eventually, governmental investigation. The owl's head tilted slightly, almost imperceptibly, in what appeared to be a gesture of acknowledgement. Then, with deliberate slowness, it turned back toward the sleeping boy. One talon extended forward, not in attack, but in a pointing motion toward Ethan's exposed neck. Sarah's maternal instinct finally shattered her paralysis. She lunged forward with a guttural cry that seemed to come from some primordial part of her being. The sound awakened Ethan, who sat up in confusion just as his mother crossed the room. The phantom, startled by this sudden movement, launched itself toward the window. But not before Sarah caught a glimpse of something clutched in its other talon. Something small and metallic that caught the light as the bird escaped through the opening. "Mom?" Ethan's voice was thick with sleep. "What's happening?" Sarah reached her son, hands frantically checking his body for injuries, finding none. "Did you see it? Did you see the bird?" she demanded, her voice higher than normal. The boy rubbed his eyes. Bird? I was dreaming about dinosaurs. Mike appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled, expression confused. Sarah? What's going on? I heard shouting. But Sarah was already moving to the window, slamming it shut with such force that the glass rattled in its frame. Outside, a pale shape disappeared into the darkness of the oak tree that stood too close to the house, a landscaping decision they would soon regret. Call the police, she said, her voice suddenly calm with the clarity of certain knowledge. Something was in Ethan's room, an owl. It was standing over him. Mike's expression shifted from confusion to concern. An owl? Inside? Are you sure you weren't dreaming? It took something, Sarah insisted, turning back to her husband. It had something in its claw when it flew out. The police arrived 23 minutes later. Officer Raymond Diaz and his partner, Officer Tamika Wilson, conducted what they initially considered a routine call, likely a case of maternal overreaction to a bird accidentally entering a home. Their incident report noted no signs of forced entry and no evidence of an animal inside the residence. They suggested the family had experienced a collective misinterpretation of shadows, or perhaps a vivid dream. But Sarah Henderson was adamant. Check the security cameras, she insisted. It must have recorded something. The family's security system included one outdoor camera monitoring the front porch and another covering the backyard. Neither had captured footage of an owl entering or exiting the property. The window, they pointed out, was on the side of the house, a blind spot in their surveillance. It wasn't until morning, when Ethan couldn't find his medical alert bracelet, the one he wore for his severe peanut allergy, that the incident took a darker turn. I always put it on my nightstand, the boy insisted, growing increasingly distressed as they searched his room. Always, every night. It's just gone. Sarah felt a chill run through her body as she recalled the metallic object clutched in the owl's talon. Mike, she whispered. That's what it took. The bracelet. But why would a bird? The question hung in the air, unanswerable by conventional understanding of avian behavior. Dr. Eleanor Winters received their call that afternoon. As the leading ornithologist in the region, she had fielded numerous questions about unusual bird behavior over the years, but nothing that approached this level of apparent deliberation. Her initial skepticism gave way to professional curiosity as Sarah described the events in precise detail. Mrs. Henderson, Dr. Winters said cautiously, what you're describing, object collection, apparent strategic thinking, these aren't behaviors typically associated with barn owls. They're efficient hunters, yes, but they don't collect shiny objects like corvids might. And they certainly don't, well, observe humans in the manner you're suggesting. I know how it sounds, Sarah replied, her voice tight with the strain of being disbelieved. But I know what I saw, and my son's medical bracelet is missing. That's not coincidence. Dr. Winters agreed to visit the Henderson home the following day. What she discovered would lead her to contact colleagues in wildlife management, behavioral zoology, and eventually, the Center for Disease Control. Because the incident at the Henderson home wasn't isolated. It was merely the first to be documented. Across Pine Creek Estates, other residents began reporting missing items. A child's retainer left on a bathroom counter, a hearing aid placed on a bedside table, a small bottle of insulin from a kitchen refrigerator. All medical devices, all taken from homes where windows had been left open, and all in homes where security cameras later revealed, when footage was examined with new attention to detail, the brief appearance of a large barn owl with distinctive markings on its left wing. The phantom wasn't just hunting in Pine Creek Estates. It was learning. The next few days unfolded in a haze of disbelief and anxiety for the Henderson family. The initial shock of the owl's intrusion gave way to a growing unease as they began to understand the implications of what had occurred. Sarah's instinct to protect her son felt more urgent than ever, and she found herself obsessively checking every window and door in their home, ensuring they were securely locked. 3 times each night, she would make the rounds through their 2-story colonial, testing latches and peering through blinds into the darkness beyond. Ethan, who had always loved the night, now shied away from the dark corners of his room, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, a plush triceratops named Horny that had been his constant companion since his 4th birthday, as if it were a talisman against the shadows. "Mom, do you think it's still out there?" he asked on the 3rd night, his voice small and uncertain as Sarah tucked him in, making sure the window was not only closed, but locked with a new secondary latch Mike had installed that afternoon. "I don't know, sweetie," she answered honestly, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "But we're being very careful now. Nothing's going to get in." The words felt hollow even as she spoke them, remembering how easily the phantom had manipulated the window latch. How intelligent those eyes had seemed. How deliberate its actions. Word of the incident spread quickly through Pine Creek Estates, igniting a mix of fascination and fear among the residents. The local Facebook group, Pine Creek Community Connect, buzzed with speculation, theories, and anecdotes. Some dismissed Sarah's claims as overreactions, while others shared their own strange encounters with wildlife in the area. "Just last week, I saw a fox rummaging through my trash," one neighbor posted. "I thought it was cute until I realized it was bold enough to come right up to my porch." The thread quickly accumulated 87 comments, ranging from skeptical to alarmed. Melissa Donovan, who lived 3 doors down and whose daughter attended the same 2nd-grade class as Ethan, stopped Sarah in the grocery store, her cart filled with extra locks and window security devices. "I believe you," she whispered, glancing around as if sharing a dangerous secret. "Last night, something scratched at our guest room window. My husband said it was just a branch, but there aren't any trees on that side of the house." Others began reporting peculiar sights at night. Unusual bird calls echoing through the trees, pets acting skittish, and the inexplicable feeling of being watched in their own homes. The Wilsons' German Shepherd, normally the most stoic animal on the block, refused to go into the backyard after sunset. The Patel's cat disappeared for 2 days, returning disheveled and unwilling to leave the laundry room. The sense of community began to fray, with some residents debating whether to call the animal control or even the police. The Hendersons became both the center of attention and the subject of whispered conversations, their encounter a cautionary tale that everyone felt compelled to share. "I heard the Henderson boy almost died," one mother whispered at soccer practice, unaware that Mike was standing just behind her. "It's not true," he interjected, causing the woman to jump and flush with embarrassment. "No one was hurt, but something did happen, and we're trying to understand it." Dr. Eleanor Winters arrived on a rainy Thursday morning, her car splattered with mud from the drive through the nearby nature preserve. She was armed with notebooks, cameras, and a palpable sense of urgency. Her reputation preceded her: author of 3 books on avian adaptation, consultant for National Geographic documentaries, and the leading expert on raptor behavior in changing environments. At 57, she moved with the energy of someone decades younger. Her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. "The reports coming in are concerning," she began as she settled at the dining room table, her brow furrowed in thought. "If this owl is indeed taking items from homes, It signifies a behavioral shift that we need to understand. Barn owls typically have a very specific hunting pattern and territory. They don't usually venture into human dwellings, let alone exhibit this kind of problem-solving behavior. She spread out several photographs on the table. Close-up shots of barn owls in flight, perched, hunting. These creatures are specialized predators, evolved over millions of years to hunt small mammals. Their hearing is so acute they can detect a mouse moving under leaves from 20 feet away. Their flight is virtually silent due to specialized feathers that break up air turbulence. But what you're describing, this apparent targeting of medical devices, that's something entirely new. Mike, who had been quiet since the incident, leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. The knuckles were white with tension, betraying the calm he tried to project for his family's sake. What does this mean for us? Is there a way to stop it? What if it comes back? His voice cracked slightly on the last question, revealing the depth of his concern. Dr. Winters nodded, her expression serious. First, we need to gather more data. I'd like to set up some monitoring equipment in your home and nearby areas. We need to determine if this is an isolated occurrence or if there are other instances. This requires careful observation. She pulled out a tablet and began showing them diagrams of camera placements and motion sensors. These are non-invasive and won't disrupt your daily routines, but they'll give us valuable insights into what's happening. Sarah felt a mix of relief and anxiety. On one hand, they were finally taking this seriously. On the other, the idea of having more equipment monitoring their home made her feel uneasy, as if acknowledging that the threat was real enough to warrant such measures. She twisted her wedding ring nervously, a habit from her nursing days when faced with difficult situations. What if it doesn't just stop at taking items? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. What if it gets more aggressive? Dr. Winters took a deep breath, considering her words carefully. We can't jump to conclusions. Barn owls generally avoid confrontation. If it feels threatened, it will retreat. But we need to ensure Ethan's safety above all else. She hesitated before continuing. There have been documented cases of owls attacking humans, but they're extremely rare and usually defensive. A parent protecting its young, for instance. What concerns me more is the apparent intelligence behind these actions. If it's learning and adapting to human environments in this way. She left the thought unfinished, but the implication hung in the air like a physical presence. The family sat in silence for a moment, each contemplating what this might mean for their future. I've contacted colleagues at the university and the wildlife management department, Dr. Winters continued, breaking the tension. We're forming a small team to investigate this properly. In the meantime, I recommend keeping all windows closed and secured, especially at night. And perhaps Ethan should sleep in your room until we better understand what we're dealing with. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the shadows lengthened, the Hendersons settled into a tense routine. Mike took to sleeping with a baseball bat beside the bed, while Sarah insisted on keeping all the windows shut, even on the warmest of nights. The house felt stifling, both physically and emotionally, as if the walls were closing in around them. Ethan, however, remained curious, his childish fascination with the owl unabated despite his fear. Maybe it just wanted to play, he suggested one night as Sarah helped him brush his teeth, his eyes wide with innocence reflected in the bathroom mirror. Or maybe it just wanted to take your stuff, Mike replied from the doorway, attempting to maintain a light-hearted tone but failing to hide the concern in his voice. The forced smile didn't reach his eyes, which constantly darted to the small window above the shower. But why my bracelet? Ethan persisted, rinsing his mouth. It's not shiny or anything, and it's too big for a nest. The question had been haunting Sarah as well. The medical alert bracelet wasn't valuable in any conventional sense, just a simple stainless steel band with Ethan's name, condition, and emergency contact information engraved on it. But its absence left him vulnerable in ways that terrified her. What if he had an allergic reaction at school or at a friend's house? What if someone gave him food containing peanuts without knowing? The thought made her stomach clench with anxiety. I don't know why, honey, she admitted, helping him into his pajamas. The ones with planets and stars, not the dinosaur pattern he'd worn that night. But Dr. Winters is going to help us figure it out. In the days that followed, Dr. Winters returned regularly, setting up cameras in strategic locations around the Henderson property. She also encouraged neighbors to report any strange incidents, which led to a grassroots investigation of sorts. Residents began to share their stories. Some spoke of hearing strange hoots echoing in the night, while others mentioned spotting an unusually large owl perched on their fences or rooftops. The more they shared, the more the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, painting a picture of a growing threat that was both fascinating and terrifying. The Johnsons, who lived at the edge of the development where the manicured lawns gave way to the wild growth of the nature preserve, reported seeing multiple owls gathering in the large oak tree behind their property. It's like they're having a meeting, Mrs. Johnson said nervously during an impromptu neighborhood gathering at the community center. They sit there for hours, just watching the house. Mr. Patel, whose diabetes supplies were kept in a small refrigerator in his bedroom, reported waking to find his window open and a vial of insulin missing. I always triple-check that window, he insisted, his hands shaking slightly as he spoke. Always. But somehow it was open, and the insulin, just the insulin, not the money in my wallet or my wife's jewelry, was gone. One evening, while reviewing the footage from the cameras, Dr. Winters spotted something unusual. The phantom had returned, landing on the outer edge of the Hendersons' property, on the branch of a maple tree that extended over their fence. It lingered for several minutes before taking off again, but not before it was joined by two other barn owls, each marked with similar distinctive features. The implication was chilling. This was not just a solitary predator, but part of a larger group, perhaps even a family unit, adapting to the changed landscape of Pine Creek Estates. Look at this, Dr. Winters said, her voice barely above a whisper as she gathered the family around the screen in their living room. The footage, captured with a high-definition night vision camera, showed the three owls perched in a row, their heads occasionally turning in perfect synchronization as they surveyed the property. This behavior is unprecedented. They're not just hunting for food, they're forming social bonds. This owl is teaching its young. What does that mean for us? Sarah asked, her heart racing as she watched the silent footage. The owls seemed almost ghostly in the infrared light, their eyes appearing as dark voids against their pale feathers. It means we need to be vigilant, Dr. Winters replied, her eyes scanning the footage frame by frame. They're learning from each other, and if they found a successful method for obtaining food or resources from humans, it could escalate. We need to create a plan to protect your home and educate the community on how to coexist with them safely. She pointed to one of the smaller owls, which appeared to be mimicking the movements of the phantom. See how the juvenile is watching the adult? This is learned behavior being passed down. In nature, this would be hunting techniques or territory defense. But here, she trailed off, the implications too disturbing to voice aloud. They're learning to break into homes, Mike finished for her, his face pale in the blue light of the screen. As the sun set that night, an uneasy calm settled over Pine Creek Estates. The owl family had returned to their roosts, and the residents tried to go about their lives. But the underlying tension was palpable. Parents kept their children indoors, pets were kept on leashes, and the once vibrant sounds of the neighborhood, children playing, neighbors chatting across fences, the ice cream truck's cheerful jingle, were muted by the sinister awareness of the predator lurking just outside. The community pool, usually packed with families on warm evenings, stood empty, its chlorinated water undisturbed except for the occasional leaf blown across its surface. The playground equipment in the Central Park creaked softly in the breeze, abandoned. Even the teenagers, who normally gathered at the corner convenience store, had found indoor alternatives for their social activities. The following day brought a storm that swept through the area, with heavy rain and howling winds that bent the trees almost to breaking point. The weather mirrored the anxiety in the community, a physical manifestation of the emotional turbulence they were experiencing. People stayed inside, glued to their screens, sharing updates about sightings, and speculating about what the owls might do next. The air was thick with anticipation, and the growing chorus of fears began to echo through the town. "I heard they attacked someone in Ridgewood last year," one message read on the community board, despite no such incident being reported in any official capacity. "My cousin works for animal control and says these birds are getting more aggressive everywhere," claimed another, spreading misinformation that fed the collective anxiety. Dr. Winters found herself not only studying the owls, but also managing the human response to them. Fear can be as dangerous as any predator, she reminded the Hendersons during a phone call as the storm raged outside. "We need to base our actions on facts, not rumors." As the rain fell, soaking the ground and turning the streets into small rivers, Sarah found herself staring out of the window, watching the trees sway in the violent gusts. Lightning occasionally illuminated the sky, revealing the silhouettes of branches against clouds that roiled like a turbulent sea. She felt a strange connection to the owl now, a mix of fear and respect. It was a creature of the wild, driven by instinct and necessity, yet it had crossed an invisible line into human territory. In that moment, she realized that this conflict was not just about her son's safety. It was about understanding the delicate balance between nature and humanity, and what happens when that balance is disrupted. "They were here first," she murmured to herself, remembering how the development brochures had boasted about reclaiming unused woodland for their community. The irony wasn't lost on her. They had taken the owls' hunting grounds, and now the owls were adapting, finding new ways to survive in a landscape forever altered by human expansion. Behind her, Ethan played with his Lego sets, building elaborate structures that he narrated with sound effects and character voices. His childhood innocence seemed both precious and fragile in the face of these new threats. Mike sat at the dining table, researching owl deterrents on his laptop, his face illuminated by the screen's blue glow in the storm-darkened room. "What if we moved?" he asked suddenly, looking up at Sarah. The question hung between them, loaded with implications about their home, their community, their sense of security. Sarah turned from the window, considering. Would it solve anything? Or would we just be running away from something we don't understand? She moved to sit across from him, reaching for his hand across the table. "Besides, if it's happening here, who's to say it isn't happening elsewhere too? Maybe not owls, but something. Nature finding ways to push back." The storm raged on, but within the heart of Pine Creek Estates, a reckoning was brewing, a battle not just against a single predator, but against the forces of nature that had been pushed to adapt on and survive in a world increasingly dominated by human presence. The community was about to face the consequences of their choices. And as night fell once more, the owls circled overhead, watching, waiting, and learning. In the darkness of the preserve, nestled in the hollow of an ancient oak, the phantom arranged its collection of human artifacts. The medical alert bracelet, the insulin vial, a child's hearing aid, an elderly man's pill organizer. Each item represented vulnerability, a weakness that could be exploited. Each item had been taken with purpose, though what that purpose might be remained, a mystery that would soon unfold in ways none of the residents of Pine Creek Estates could possibly imagine. The rain beat against the leaves, creating a natural symphony that masked the soft hooting calls exchanged between the owls. Communications too complex for human understanding, plans being made in a language as old as the forest itself. And as the storm began to abate, the first owl took flight, its wings cutting silently through the damp night air. Its destination, a home where a window had been left open just a crack to let in the fresh, rain-washed breeze. The hunt had begun anew. The storm had passed, leaving Pine Creek Estates glistening under the pale morning light. Puddles dotted the streets, reflecting the sky like scattered mirrors, while droplets clung to leaves and grass blades, transforming the landscape into a glittering tableau. The air felt cleansed, carrying the earthy scent of wet soil and the subtle fragrance of rain-washed flowers. It was the kind of morning that typically filled residents with a sense of renewal. But today, an undercurrent of tension ran through the community, dampening the natural beauty around them. Dr. Winters arrived at the Henderson home earlier than expected, her face drawn with fatigue, but her eyes alert with urgency. She carried a thick folder tucked under her arm and a tablet displaying what appeared to be a map of the neighborhood. Without waiting for pleasantries, she spread her materials across the kitchen table where Sarah was nursing her second cup of coffee. "We've compiled the reports from across the community," Dr. Winters began, tapping the screen to enlarge the map. "Every red dot represents a confirmed incident, either a sighting or a theft. The yellow dots are unconfirmed, but probable based on our criteria." Sarah leaned forward, her stomach tightening as she took in the visualization. Red and yellow dots clustered across the map of Pine Creek Estates, creating an unmistakable pattern. The highest concentration centered around the nature preserve that bordered the eastern edge of the development. But dots appeared throughout the community, reaching even to the westernmost homes near the main road. "There are so many," she whispered, tracing her finger over the screen. "I had no idea it was this widespread." Dr. Winters nodded grimly. 37 confirmed incidents in the past 2 weeks alone, and these are just the ones reported to us. I suspect there are more that people haven't connected to our situation. Mike entered the kitchen, his hair still damp from the shower, and stopped abruptly when he saw their visitor. "Dr. Winters, I didn't realize you were coming this morning." He glanced at the materials spread across the table. "What's happening?" "Patterns," Dr. Winters replied, gesturing for him to join them. "We're seeing definitive patterns in both the targets and the timing." She pulled out several photographs from her folder. Grainy images captured from security, cameras and cell phones showing owls perched on fences, flying near windows, even one particularly disturbing shot of what appeared to be the phantom, peering through a sliding glass door, its face eerily illuminated by the interior lights. "The community response has been invaluable," she continued. "Once people understood what to look for, the reports started flooding in. And something became very clear. She pulled out a sheet of paper with a list of items. These are the objects that have been taken over the past month. Notice anything? Sarah and Mike scanned the list. Medical alert bracelet, Ethan Henderson. Insulin vial, Raj Patel. Hearing aid, Emily Goldstein. Pill organizer, Walter Jenkins. EpiPen, Alicia Martinez. Blood pressure monitor, Samuel Washington. Asthma inhaler, Tyler Brooks. Glucose meter, Diane Thompson. Heart medication, Harold Wilson. Prescription glasses, Margaret Chen. They're all medical, Sarah said slowly, the realization dawning on her. Everything on this list is related to health conditions. Precisely, Dr. Winters confirmed, her voice tight with controlled excitement, the kind that comes not from pleasure but from scientific validation of a troubling hypothesis. Not a single report of jewelry, cash, or electronics being taken. Only items related to health vulnerabilities. And there's more. She flipped to another page showing a timeline. The thefts follow a pattern. They occur primarily between midnight and 3 a.m., with a notable concentration around 2 a.m. when most people are in their deepest sleep cycle. Mike ran a hand through his hair, his expression shifting from confusion to a dawning horror. Are you saying these owls are targeting people? Specifically going after those with medical conditions? Dr. Winters hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the implications of her own research. I'm saying there's a statistical pattern that defies random chance. Whether it's intentional targeting or some other factor we haven't identified yet remains to be determined. But the correlation is undeniable. From the hallway came the sound of small feet padding across the floor, and Ethan appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his spaceship pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. Morning, he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Then, noticing Dr. Winters, he perked up slightly. Are you here about the owls again? Sarah quickly gathered the photographs, shielding her son from the disturbing images. Yes, honey. Dr. Winters is helping us understand what's happening. How about some breakfast? Pancakes? With chocolate chips? Ethan asked hopefully, momentarily distracted from the adults' serious conversation. Half chocolate chips, half blueberries. Sarah compromised, rising to prepare the batter. Why don't you go wash up first? As Ethan disappeared back down the hallway, Dr. Winters lowered her voice. There's something else. Something I haven't shared with the community yet, because I wanted to confirm it with you first. She pulled out her phone and opened a video file. This was captured by the Morgan's security camera last night, around 1:30 a.m. The footage showed the Morgan's backyard, dimly lit by security lights. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Just a typical suburban yard with a patio, some outdoor furniture, and a small garden. Then, a shadow moved across the screen, an owl landing on the fence. It sat perfectly still for nearly a minute before another owl joined it. Then another, and another. 4 of them, Mike whispered, counting the birds as they appeared. 5, actually, Dr. Winters corrected, pointing to a smaller shape partially hidden in the shadows. The juvenile is there, behind the others. Watch what happens next. On the screen, the owls remained motionless for several minutes. Then, as if responding to some unseen signal, they dispersed in different directions, each flying toward a different house in the neighborhood. The footage ended with the yard empty once more. No evidence remaining of the eerie gathering that had taken place. They're coordinating, Sarah said, her hands gripping the edge of the counter so tightly her knuckles turned white. Working together. Dr. Winters nodded slowly. It appears so. This level of social cooperation is unprecedented in barn owls. They're typically solitary hunters that only come together for mating and raising young. This behavior, this apparent strategizing, it's something entirely new. But why? Mike asked, the question that had been haunting all of them since that first night. What do they want with these medical items? Before Dr. Winters could respond, a sharp knock at the front door startled them. Mike went to answer it, returning moments later with Officer Diaz, the policeman who had responded to their initial call. His uniform was crisp, but his expression was troubled. "Mrs. Henderson, Dr. Winters." He greeted them with a nod. "I apologize for the early visit, but there's been a development I thought you should know about." He glanced around, ensuring Ethan wasn't within earshot. There was an incident at the Thompson residence last night. Mrs. Thompson woke up to find an owl in her bedroom, standing on her husband's chest while he slept. When she screamed, it flew out through the open window, taking his emergency heart medication with it. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Was anyone hurt?" Officer Diaz shook his head. "No, but Mr. Thompson has a serious heart condition. Without his medication." He let the implication hang in the air. "The pharmacy is rushing a replacement, but it's concerning. This is the first time we've had a report of one of these birds getting so close to a sleeping person since your experience." Dr. Winters was already typing notes into her tablet. "Did Mrs. Thompson describe the owl? Any distinctive markings?" "She said it had what looked like a white check mark on its left wing. Does that mean something to you?" Dr. Winters and Sarah exchanged a look. "That's the Phantom," Sarah confirmed. "The same one that was in Ethan's room." Officer Diaz's professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing genuine concern. "Look, I'll be honest with you. When you first reported this, I thought it was just a strange, one-off incident. But now we've got multiple reports, and the chief is taking it seriously. We're increasing patrols in the area, especially at night, but..." He hesitated. "We're not equipped to deal with wildlife issues of this nature. This is beyond our usual scope." "I've contacted the State Wildlife Management Department," Dr. Winters assured him. "They're sending a specialist team tomorrow. In the meantime, we need to warn the community, especially those with medical conditions, to secure their homes and keep all windows closed, even in this heat." As Officer Diaz departed with promises to coordinate with Dr. Winters' team, Sarah returned to making pancakes for Ethan, her movements mechanical as her mind raced with implications. The kitchen filled with the sweet aroma of cooking batter, creating a surreal contrast to the ominous conversation that had just taken place. "We should consider leaving for a while," Mike suggested quietly, coming to stand beside her at the stove. "Maybe stay with my parents in the city until this is resolved." Sarah flipped a pancake, watching the golden brown surface sizzle on the griddle. "And what about everyone else? The Patels, the Thompsons, the Martinezes? Do they all leave too? Where does it end, Mike?" She lowered her voice further. "Besides, what if it's not just here? What if this is happening in other places too, and we just don't know about it yet?" The question lingered between them, unanswerable and troubling. From the living room came the sounds of Ethan turning on the television, the cheerful theme song of his favorite cartoon, creating a bizarre juxtaposition against their grim discussion. Dr. Winters gathered her materials, preparing to leave. "I'm meeting with the community board this afternoon to present our findings and recommendations. I'd like both of you to be there if possible. Your first-hand experience lends credibility to the situation." "We'll be there," Mike assured her, walking her to the door. As the ornithologist departed, Sarah called Ethan for breakfast, arranging pancakes on his plate in the shape of a smiley face, chocolate chip eyes, blueberry mouth, a gesture of normalcy in a world that felt increasingly unhinged. He slid into his chair, immediately reaching for the syrup. "Mom," he said, dousing his breakfast in sticky sweetness, "I had a dream about the owl last night." Sarah froze, the coffee cup halfway to her lips. "Oh, what kind of dream?" Ethan chewed thoughtfully, seemingly unconcerned. "It was standing outside my window, looking in. But it wasn't scary. It was like it was trying to tell me something." "Tell you what, buddy?" Mike asked, attempting to keep his tone casual despite the chill that ran down his spine. Ethan shrugged, already distracted by the rivulets of syrup running down his pancake stack. "I don't know. I couldn't understand owl language." He giggled at his own joke, then added more seriously, "But it felt important." Sarah and Mike exchanged glances over their son's head, a silent communication of shared concern. Outside, the sun continued to rise in a cloudless sky, promising a beautiful day that belied the darkness gathering around Pine Creek Estates. A darkness that moved on silent wings and watched with intelligent eyes, learning, adapting, and waiting for the cover of night to continue its mysterious mission. That afternoon, the community center was packed beyond capacity. Residents stood along the walls and spilled out into the hallway, all straining to hear Dr. Winters as she presented her findings. The atmosphere was tense, a mixture of skepticism, fear, and morbid fascination. Sarah noticed Mrs. Thompson sitting in the front row, her husband beside her looking pale and shaken, his hand occasionally moving to the pocket where his replacement medication was kept. "Based on the evidence we've gathered," Dr. Winters concluded after a detailed presentation, "we believe we're witnessing an unprecedented behavioral adaptation in the local barn owl population. Whether this is a response to habitat encroachment, environmental factors, or some other stimulus remains unclear. What is clear is that these birds have developed a pattern of entering homes and removing specific items related to medical conditions." "But why?" Someone called from the back of the room. "What do owls want with our medicine?" Dr. Winters hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with speculation. "We don't have a definitive answer yet. It could be that these items share some characteristic, a scent or material, that attracts the owls for reasons we don't understand. Or—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Or it could be a more complex behavioral adaptation." "You mean they're doing it on purpose?" Another voice stated flatly. "Targeting the vulnerable." A murmur ran through the crowd, fear, disbelief, anger. "We can't attribute human motivations to wildlife," Dr. Winters cautioned. "But we can observe patterns and respond accordingly. The wildlife management team arriving tomorrow will implement temporary measures to deter the owls from residential areas while we study this phenomenon further." "And what if those measures don't work?" Mrs. Jenkins asked, her elderly husband clutching his cane beside her. "What if they keep coming?" The question hung in the air, unanswered as the meeting dissolved into smaller discussions, neighbors huddling together to share stories and fears. Sarah noticed how people unconsciously formed groups. The elderly with the elderly, families with young children clustering together, as if physical proximity could provide protection against the invisible threat. As they prepared to leave, Sarah felt a tug on her sleeve. She turned to find Melissa Donovan, her face pale with worry. "Sarah, there's something I haven't told anyone else," she whispered, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "Last night, after the storm, I found something on our porch. A dead mouse." Sarah frowned, not understanding the significance. A mouse? Could have been the neighbor's cat. Melissa shook her head emphatically. No, you don't understand. It was arranged, placed right in front of our door, perfectly centered. And beside it was my daughter's asthma inhaler, the one that went missing last week. Her voice broke slightly. It was like an offering or a message. A chill ran down Sarah's spine as she recalled Ethan's words from breakfast. It was trying to tell me something. Have you told Dr. Winters? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first, since you were the first to experience this. Melissa clutched Sarah's arm tightly. What's happening, Sarah? What do they want from us? Before Sarah could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. A man she didn't recognize, tall, dressed in a dark suit that seemed out of place in their casual community, was speaking intently with Dr. Winters. The ornithologist's expression shifted from surprise to concern as she listened. Who is that? Sarah asked, watching the interaction. No idea, Melissa replied. Never seen him around here before. As they watched, Dr. Winters nodded gravely, then turned to address the lingering crowd. Everyone, I've just received some information that I need to verify. Please continue to secure your homes tonight, and we'll reconvene tomorrow when the wildlife management team arrives. The mysterious man slipped out as quietly as he had entered, leaving behind a ripple of speculation among the residents. Dr. Winters caught Sarah's eye across the room and gave a small nod, a silent promise to explain later. That evening, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across Pine Creek estates, the community retreated behind locked doors and closed windows despite the summer heat. The usual sounds of children playing outside, of neighbors chatting across fences, of life being lived in the open air, were noticeably absent. Instead, air conditioners hummed at full capacity. Television sounds leaked through closed windows, and an unnatural stillness settled over the development. In the Henderson home, Sarah moved through the rooms, checking locks and drawing curtains with methodical precision. Mike had installed additional security measures throughout the day. Window stops, motion-activated lights, even mesh screens over the smaller bathroom windows. Ethan watched these preparations with solemn curiosity, sensing the gravity of the situation despite his parents' attempts to maintain normalcy. Will the owls try to come in again tonight? He asked as Sarah tucked him into bed. His room now transformed into a fortress of sorts, with blackout curtains and a baby monitor they had dug out of storage. I don't know, sweetie, she answered honestly. But we're making sure they can't get in, just to be safe. I'm not scared of them, Ethan declared, though he clutched Horny the Triceratops a bit tighter than usual. They're just birds. Sarah smoothed his hair back, wishing she could share his simplistic view. Smart birds, though. And sometimes smart creatures can be unpredictable. She kissed his forehead. Sleep tight. Dad and I will be right down the hall. As she turned to leave, Ethan spoke again, his voice smaller now. Mom, if they can't get in, how will they give my bracelet back? The innocent question stopped her in her tracks. Your bracelet? In my dream, Ethan explained, yawning. The owls said they were keeping it safe for me, but they need to give it back soon because it's important. Sarah felt a chill run through her body despite the warmth of the room. It was just a dream, Ethan. Dreams aren't real. But as she left his room, closing the door softly behind her, she wasn't sure she believed her own words anymore. Because somewhere in the darkness beyond their secured home, the phantom and its growing flock were gathering again, their silent communication incomprehensible to human ears, their purpose still unknown, but increasingly ominous. And as the night deepened, the first reports began to come in, not of thefts this time, but of offerings. Dead mice, voles, and shrews appeared on porches and doorsteps across Pine Creek estates, each carefully placed beside returned medical items. A message, perhaps, or a warning. The community held its collective breath, waiting for dawn and the arrival of the wildlife management team. But some, like Sarah Henderson, were beginning to suspect that conventional methods might not be sufficient against an adversary that seemed to be evolving before their eyes, adapting not just to survive in a human world, but perhaps to challenge humanity's place within it. In the preserve, the phantom perched high in its ancient oak, surrounded by its growing flock, the collection of medical items arranged in an inexplicable pattern below. And as the moon rose over Pine Creek Estates, its light revealed dozens of glowing eyes watching from the darkness, waiting for the right moment to deliver their message to the humans who had claimed their territory. A message that would soon become impossible to ignore or misunderstand. The battle for Pine Creek Estates had only just begun.